Have you ever seen someone freeze in the middle of a conversation, breathing hard, heart pounding, unable to explain what's happening to them? In this story, I'll show you exactly how Lucía overcame years of panic attacks and how my approach helped her reclaim her life. And I'll also share what you must never say to someone having a panic attack. It can make all the difference. Lucía was a 32-year-old marketing manager living in Madrid. From the outside, Lucía looked like she had everything under control. Successful career, friends, fitness routine, the occasional weekend getaway. But what no one saw were the sleepless nights, the fear of being alone, and the growing dread of losing control in public. When she first came to me, she wasn't looking for therapy. She was looking for a way to survive her own mind. I still remember her first words. She sat across from me, eyes restless, and said, "Doctor, I think I'm dying. My heart stops, I can't breathe, and everyone tells me it's just stress. But it feels like death." Her voice cracked slightly, not out of drama, but exhaustion, the kind that comes from fighting something you can't name. And this is something I want to say right here at the start. If you ever meet someone who says they're having a panic attack, don't tell them to calm down. Don't tell them to breathe normally or stop thinking too much. Their body isn't responding to logic at that moment. They're not overreacting, they're overwhelmed. The kindest thing you can do is stay calm yourself, help them feel safe, and remind them that what's happening will pass. That simple act can mean more than 1,000 comforting words. Lucía's first attack happened in the middle of a work presentation. She was explaining a campaign strategy when suddenly her chest tightened, her vision blurred, and her throat felt like it was closing. She thought it was a heart attack. The ambulance took her to the emergency room, but every test came back normal. The doctor said, "It's anxiety. You're fine." But she didn't feel fine, because once that first attack happens, something changes. Your brain begins to fear the fear itself. Over the next few weeks, Lucía became trapped in a cycle of anticipation. She stopped going to the gym because she thought her heartbeat might get too fast. She avoided elevators, meetings, and even restaurants. Panic had hijacked her everyday life, whispering, "What if it happens again?" She described it to me later like living with a silent threat. When she came to my clinic, she was pale and visibly tired. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to explain how her life had changed. "I'm not myself anymore," she said. "I can't even go out with my friends. I'm scared all the time." Behind those words was not just fear, but shame, because people around her didn't understand. Her friends teased her for being dramatic. Her parents told her she needed more faith. Her manager suggested a vacation. Nobody saw the invisible storm. As she spoke, I noticed how her body told the story too. Tense shoulders, shallow breathing, tapping fingers. Panic attacks often leave an imprint not just on the mind, but on the body. The nervous system becomes hyper-alert, scanning for danger even in safe places. I explained this to her gently. "Your body isn't broken, Lucía. It's just reacting too quickly to perceived danger. Our goal isn't to eliminate fear, but to teach your body it's safe again." That day, she looked skeptical, almost hopeless. But I've learned something over the years. Even in the most fearful eyes, there's always a spark of strength waiting to be recognized. And I told her that too. "You've already survived every panic attack you've ever had," I said. "That means you're stronger than you think." We started with simple awareness exercises, nothing complicated. Just observing her breath, her heartbeat, her thoughts, without trying to change them. At first, she resisted. "Doctor, I can't sit still. My heart races more when I try to relax." And that's common. For someone with panic disorder, silence can feel threatening because the mind fills it with alarm. But slowly, she learned that observing her sensations didn't make her weaker. It made her aware. Awareness, I told her, is the beginning of control. Over time, Lucía began to open up about her life beyond the symptoms. She confessed how her friends had started distancing themselves. "They think I'm faking it," she said. "That I'm too emotional." Her voice trembled as she mentioned how her family avoided the topic altogether, calling it just nerves. That social isolation, the quiet judgment, often becomes more painful than the panic itself. Because when people don't believe you're suffering, you start to doubt your own reality, and that's something I want everyone watching this to remember. When someone is struggling with panic, anxiety, or depression, they don't need to be fixed. They need to be understood. They don't need someone to minimize their pain. They need someone who listens without trying to solve it instantly. Sometimes healing starts with feeling heard. As our sessions continued, Lucía began journaling after each panic episode. Not to analyze it, but to describe it. What she felt, where she was, what triggered it. Patterns started to emerge, moments of tension at work, arguments, lack of sleep. Panic, I told her, is rarely random. It's the body's way of saying, something inside me needs attention. And with every session, I could see glimpses of change. Not dramatic ones, but subtle. She smiled a bit more. Her shoulders relaxed. The tone of her voice softened. That's how healing happens. Quietly, beneath the surface, until one day you realize you've begun to breathe freely again. When Lucía first entered my office, her body sat in the chair, but her mind was miles away. She had a calm face, but her eyes were hollow, like she'd stopped expecting anything from the world. In the first session, I didn't ask her why she was sad. I asked her when she stopped feeling happy. She looked down and said softly, "I think it started when I realized nobody would ever really understand me." That sentence stayed with me. It told me that her depression wasn't just about sadness. It was about disconnection. Over the next few weeks, our therapy revolved around that single word, connection. I used cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, to help her challenge the thoughts that convinced her she was invisible. For example, she often said, "People only stay with me until they find someone better." Together, we wrote those thoughts down and dissected them. Was there evidence? Was it fact or fear? Slowly, Lucía began to see that her brain was filtering reality through pain, not truth. One day, during our 5th session, she broke down completely. She told me about losing her younger sister in a car accident 3 years ago, and how she blamed herself for letting her go out that night. That was the moment the therapy truly began. Her depression wasn't only about her job, her loneliness, or her sleepless nights. It was grief trapped inside guilt. I explained to her a concept from neuropsychology. When guilt repeats itself in your thoughts, your brain treats it like a daily trauma. It rewires your emotional circuits to expect punishment instead of relief. That insight hit her hard. She said, "So I've been punishing myself for being alive?" I nodded. From that day, our work shifted from survival to forgiveness. We started exposure therapy, revisiting her memories in controlled doses, reframing them until her mind no longer saw them as danger zones. Each week, I could see small signs of change. She started smiling during small talk. She began taking walks again. She even brought a sketchbook and showed me a drawing she made, a broken vase stitched together with golden threads. When I asked her what it meant, she said, "It's me." Broken but still beautiful, that was her breakthrough moment. The point where self-awareness transformed into healing. Science calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself when we change our thoughts and actions. But I like to call it emotional rebirth. Lucía was learning that healing wasn't about forgetting pain. It was about teaching your brain that you are safe again. As weeks turned into months, Lucía's sessions began to feel different. She still arrived early, holding her coffee the same way, but her eyes, those eyes that once held exhaustion, now carried warmth. A quiet confidence had replaced the tremble in her voice. During one session, she smiled and said, "Doctor, I haven't had a panic attack in 6 weeks." She said it like someone still testing if happiness was allowed, cautious but hopeful. I smiled back and told her something I often remind my patients. The absence of panic isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of peace. Lucía's recovery was not linear. Some days she felt powerful. Other days, the familiar fear crept back in like an old friend at the door. But this time, she knew how to handle it. She had learned to observe her anxiety, not become it. She practiced grounding exercises, controlled breathing, and something I like to teach called cognitive diffusion, separating yourself from your thoughts instead of being swallowed by them. When her chest tightened, she would place her hand on her heart and whisper, "This feeling is temporary. I am safe." That small sentence became her anchor. Her family noticed the change first. Her mother once called me after a session and said, "Doctor, she's laughing again. It's been years." And that for me was the real sign of healing, when the people around the patient start to feel the light too. In her final session, Lucía brought me a small notebook. Inside were pages filled with sketches and quotes she'd written during therapy. On the last page, she had written, I used to think panic attacks meant I was weak. Now I know they were my body's cry for help. And I finally listened. I closed the notebook and told her something I want everyone watching this video to remember. When someone you know is dealing with panic attacks or depression, don't blame them for feeling too much. Thank them for still trying. Treat them with gentleness. You might be the reason they find hope again. Lucía left my office that day with a smile that felt like sunrise after a long night. And though I knew our sessions had ended, her story would stay with me. A reminder that even the darkest corners of the mind can be illuminated by care, science, and compassion. So if you're watching this and you know someone who's struggling, don't tell them to just calm down or get over it. Sit beside them. Listen. Remind them that healing takes time. But it's always possible. And if you are that person, remember, your brain can change, your heart can heal, and your story isn't over yet. This was Dr. Nazareth, and this was one more page from the Psychiatrist's diary. Stay kind. Stay aware. And above all, stay human.